One of the debt plan holdouts is Matt Gaetz. Yes, the same thorn in McCarthy's side who delayed his election as Speaker. The GOP congressman from Florida, he joins me now. Congressman, welcome back. So when did Republicans find religion on spending?
Well, I think you've seen a little more than a dozen of us never vote for an increase in the debt limit. And so to do so, there has to be substantial downward pressure on spending. We're deeply concerned about a $32 trillion debt, what that means in terms of the dollar's position as the global reserve currency, and the extent to which government spending is driving the very inflation that we were elected to check. So we think Joe Biden should negotiate. That's what Democrat Joe Manchin said. That's what Democrat House member Jared Moskowitz said. And I think the American people understand that those negotiations are necessary in divided government.
My parents always said time and a place when they were raising my brother and me. Is this the time? Is this the place? And what I mean by that is we've already made these commitments. It would be like me with a spending problem. Instead of curbing my spending, now instead risking default and saying to creditors, no, I'm not going to honor the commitments that I've made.
No, I speak from personal experience when I say that when you've maxed out your credit cards, it's a pretty good time to evaluate your spending habits. And in the 7 years I've been in Congress, we haven't honored the true budget process even once. And so the debt limit presents a unique opportunity to try to put downward pressure on spending. 4 times when Joe Biden, as a United States Senator, voted to raise the debt limit, he demanded corresponding spending cuts. When Joe Biden didn't vote to raise the debt limit, he said it was because there weren't spending cuts at times. So if we had Joe Biden as president with the same perspective as Joe Biden as vice president or as senator, we'd probably have more negotiating going on now than we do.
Are the issues that you personally are raising, are they worth delaying this whole process? My understanding is that you're fixated on work rules and whether they begin in fiscal year 2024. I don't want to lose everybody in the weeds versus fiscal year 2025. It seems like you're tinkering at the margins.
Welfare to work should be a cornerstone of these negotiations. If Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich could make welfare to work deals, then certainly we should be able to make those with Joe Biden. And if any feature of this deal is sincere, it will start immediately. The oldest trick in Washington is to delay things 2, 3, 5 years down the road, to tell the voters that you believe in them, but to get the spending now and the cuts delayed. I'm not falling for that trick. My colleagues who put conditions on Speaker McCarthy are not going to fall for that trick. And let me answer the question you asked in your monologue. Absolutely. Features of the deal that allowed Kevin McCarthy to ascend to the speakership require him to fight on top-line spending levels in this debt limit battle and to not delay that for the appropriations process that usually gets rolled up in one big omnibus bill.
Could this lead to, my recollection of the whole fight over him being elected speaker is that the resolution was that a single member could call for his ouster. You correct me if I'm wrong. Could this lead to that? Could you or one of your colleagues conceptually be calling for his ouster because of this impasse?
No one is looking to lower the sword of Damocles quite yet, Michael. Right now, we're working to get a responsible fiscal policy sent to the Senate. We believe that puts pressure on Schumer and Biden to work with us to try to avoid the catastrophic consequences you mentioned. But don't forget, there are also catastrophic consequences if we continue to drive these deficits up and this debt further and further into the future. That risks every economic opportunity for every American. And if we lose this dollar and if inflation continues, the savagery to the American family and the American economy will be severe.
The caucus is 222. You know the math. Speaker McCarthy, can lose 4. Right now, how many holdouts are there, yourself included?
Twice that. So I do not expect that there will be a vote as planned tomorrow on the McCarthy debt limit increase. I think there are still a few details we have to work out on work requirements, on some of the Green New Deal tax credits that we would like to see repealed, and there's some disagreement in our conference about that. And if we're able to get that done, I don't think it'll be tomorrow. I think that there's still some time for the cement to dry. So but it may very well be that what we send out of the House with 218 votes is the only thing we can get 218 votes for. Mr. Schumer and President Biden should take note of that.
Okay, so I'm hearing Matt Gaetz say that there are 8 holdouts as of this moment in time. There won't be a vote tomorrow. Have you personally spoken to Kevin McCarthy about this?
I wasn't able to speak to him this evening, but I spoke to members of his leadership team. I made very clear where I stood, and several of my colleagues did the same, and they've been public about it. And so I think that there's still a little work to do, but I don't despair that. I think that what the American people want to see is that people putting aside partisan affiliation and working together to reduce spending and to not have the catastrophic impact of defaulting, which is not something anybody wants to see.
You heard me say at the outset, I addressed the subject with some level of trepidation because I feel like viewers across the country are saying, we've heard it all before, and they always seem to work this out. Is this going to get worked out?
I hope so. And there's a lot of momentum toward that. But ultimately, the Democrats get a vote as well. My Republican colleagues would like to see a plan that actually starts to bend that curve of exponentially increasing spending. We want to claw back some of the COVID funds that are unobligated. We want pro-growth policies like H.R. 1 on energy. We want the REINS Act to curb the administrative state. And if we do all that, there could potentially be a deal on the table. But the Democrats have to understand we control 1/3 of the government, and we are going to maximize that leverage to achieve our goals.
I get it. I would just say in closing, I've spoken to the folks at the Peterson Foundation. I'm sure the audience knows the commercials to which I refer. Peterson, I think his name, left $1 billion to focus the public's attention on this issue. And they make the point that we're in the fix we are, the $31 trillion, because of R's and D's. Both have spent too much. Final word?
I am eager to work with any Democrat who can see areas of our federal spending where we can curb and cut. Maybe we could agree to spend some less money to Ukraine. I mean, if we're at the debt limit for our country, why are we funding the government of another country? Seems like a reasonable thing that Republicans and Democrats ought to be able to work on. But I agree, both parties have contributed to this mess, and it's probably going to take both parties negotiating to get out of it.
We'll come back and discuss that later, because the answer is because they're facing a savage invasion at the hands of Vladimir Putin, and we're defending democracy.
Well, at a very high cost to Americans, and I wonder whether or not we're extending the frequency of that savagery or not.
Congressman Gaetz, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Michael.